Imagine being a slave, yearning for freedom. What would you do if you had the chance to escape? Picture this. A time steeped in antiquity, the world as we know it was a vastly different place. A time when mighty pharaohs ruled over the land of Egypt, their will was law, their power absolute. In this time, the Hebrew people, a proud and ancient race, found themselves in the iron grip of bondage, shackled not just by chains but by a life of servitude that seemed endless. It was a harsh existence, toiling under the relentless Egyptian sun, building monuments to the glory of pharaohs, their sweat and blood seeping into the very stones. Among these Hebrews rose a man named Moses, a man who was chosen by destiny to bear the heavy mantle of deliverance. Moses, a Hebrew by birth yet raised in the opulence of the Pharaoh's palace, was tasked with a divine mission to free his people from the shackles of slavery and lead them to the promised land. But first, Moses had a formidable challenge to overcome. He had to convince the mighty Pharaoh to release the Hebrews. And so Moses, armed with nothing more than his faith and the power of his God, stood before Pharaoh demanding the release of his people. When words failed, God sent a series of 10 devastating plagues upon Egypt. Rivers turned to blood, locusts swarmed the fields, darkness enveloped the land, and finally the death of the firstborn shook the very foundations of Pharaoh's palace. It was this final, grievous blow that broke Pharaoh's resistance. He finally relented, releasing the Hebrews from their bondage. The Hebrews, weary yet hopeful, gathered their meager belongings and left the land of their captivity. Their hearts were filled with a newfound hope, their spirits buoyed with the promise of freedom. And so the Hebrew people were free. But was it really the end of their struggle? Freedom at last, but not without a price. The Hebrews, once shackled by the chains of slavery, had tasted liberation, but their joy was short-lived. For the Pharaoh, the mighty ruler of Egypt, had a sudden change of heart. Imagine his regal courts, once teeming with Hebrew slaves, now eerily silent. The economic backbone of his kingdom had walked away, and with it his pride. This was a blow too severe for the Pharaoh to ignore, and so he summoned his chariots, his soldiers, his mighty army. The dust from the hooves of their horses filled the air as they thundered across the desert, a terrifying force hell-bent on reclaiming what was once theirs. As the rumbling of chariots echoed across the barren landscape, the Hebrews looked back in terror. Their path to freedom was now a pursuit, a chase that threatened to undo their newfound liberty. The fear was palpable among the Hebrews. A sea of worried faces looked towards the horizon, their hearts pounding as they saw the Egyptian soldiers closing in. Panic set in. Mothers clutched their children closer. Men gripped their makeshift weapons tighter. The elderly prayed fervently. The joy of liberation was replaced with the terror of recapture, and then they found themselves trapped. On one side, the towering, impassable mountains. In front of them, the vast, unending Red Sea. Behind them, the relentless Egyptian army closing in, their swords glinting under the harsh sun. The reality of their situation was stark. They were cornered, with nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. The Hebrews were trapped, caught between the proverbial rock and a hard place, or in this case, a mountain and the Red Sea. All seemed lost, but as they say, it's always darkest before the dawn, and dawn was about to break on the shores of the Red Sea. Trapped between a mountain and the Red Sea, what could the Hebrews do? The answer to that question would change the course of their destiny forever. Picture this. A vast sea stretching out as far as the eye can see, a seemingly insurmountable obstacle. On one side, a desperate crowd of Hebrews, their hearts pounding with fear as they stand trapped between the mountains and the sea. Behind them, they hear the ominous rumble of chariots, the determined pursuit of the Egyptian soldiers. In the midst of this chaos, a figure stands tall and unyielding. Moses, the man chosen by God to lead his people to freedom. His eyes, filled with a calm determination that belies the panic around him, are locked onto the endless expanse of the Red Sea. He raises his arm, a staff clutched firmly in his hand, and speaks words of faith and power. Suddenly, the impossible becomes possible. The sea parts, its mighty waters pushed aside as if by an unseen hand, revealing a path of dry land. It's an awe-inspiring sight, a testament to the limitless power of God. The Hebrews, their fear momentarily forgotten, stare in wonder and disbelief. Their path to freedom, once blocked by the imposing sea, is now clear. With a nod from Moses, they begin to cross. Men, women, children, the elderly, all of them stepping onto the dry seabed, their faces reflecting a mixture of disbelief, relief, and awe. They walked between towering walls of water, held back by an unseen force, a miracle unfolding right before their eyes. The Hebrews crossed the Red Sea, their steps echoing the rhythm of faith and hope, their hearts filled with gratitude for the miracle they are witnessing. Yes, they still have a long journey ahead, a journey to the Promised Land. But for now, they are safe, protected by the power of God, walking on a path that was once the bed of a sea. But what about the pursuing Egyptian soldiers? A miracle can be a blessing for some and a curse for others. When we left off, the Hebrews had just crossed the Red Sea, a path miraculously carved out by the hand of God through Moses. But as they reached the other side, their hearts pounded in their chests as they turned to see the Egyptian soldiers in hot pursuit, their chariots kicking up a cloud of dust visible for miles. But then something extraordinary happened. Moses, guided by divine intervention, stretched out his hand over the sea once more. As the Hebrews watched in awe, the towering walls of water that had been their salvation came crashing down, engulfing the entire Egyptian army. The soldiers, once the nightmare of the Hebrews, were swallowed whole by the sea, their chariots and horses disappearing beneath the waves. The might of Pharaoh's army was no match for the power of God. Imagine the relief that flooded over the Hebrews as the last of the water settled. The joy that erupted among them was infectious, their laughter and cheers echoing off the mountains around them. They were safe, truly safe, for the first time in generations. The terror that had been gripping their hearts was replaced with jubilation. Their oppressors, the ones who had enslaved them for so long, were no more. This was more than a victory. This was a declaration of their freedom, a testament to their faith, and an unforgettable demonstration of God's power. They were no longer slaves. With their enemies defeated, the Hebrews could finally look forward to a life of freedom. Every ending is a new beginning, a profound truth, especially for the Hebrew people who, after the Exodus, found themselves at the threshold of a new chapter in their lives. They had witnessed the miraculous power of God, which had not only freed them from the shackles of slavery, but also safeguarded them from the mighty Egyptian army. But their journey was far from over. As they stood on the other side of the Red Sea, they faced a vast desert, a wilderness that was to be their path to the Promised Land. The journey was grueling, laden with hardships. The scorching heat of the desert during the day, the biting cold at night, the challenge of finding food and water all tested their resolve. But amid these trials, they discovered an inner strength, a resilience fueled by their faith in God. Their belief was their beacon, guiding them through the most challenging terrains and the harshest conditions. It was their faith that transformed the manna from heaven into a symbol of God's providence, a daily reminder that despite the physical hardships, they were not alone. Their story, the story of the Exodus, resonates through the annals of time. It is a story of hope, of resilience, of faith, and of liberation. It is a story that gives voice to the silenced, strength to the oppressed, and hope to the hopeless. It is a story that reminds us that no matter how insurmountable the challenges may seem, with faith, we can overcome. The drowning of the Egyptian soldiers is a stark reminder that no earthly power can stand against divine will. This journey filled with trials and triumphs is not unlike our own. We too face mountains and seas in our lives, moments that test our faith and resolve. But remember, just as the Red Sea parted for the Hebrews, so too can the seas of our troubles part, if we hold strong in our faith and trust in divine guidance. If you enjoyed this story, please share to help spread the word of our God. Hit the like button and subscribe to join our family. Thank you for watching. God bless you.